Who do you think that comic books are typically made for? Who do you think comic books / graphic novels are usually made for?
True, really?
Yeah.
Teenage boys. Teenage to early 20s. Yeah. They like sci-fi.
Who do you think that comics are generally made for?
Nerds. Nerds.
Kids, and then men. My age is probably 18 to however old, you know.
As negative as it gets, I think, is that it's just for kids. I mean, I don't think too many people think too harshly of comics. Like, you know, and once again, you know, we live in an age where, you know, everything's starting to be based off of comics, and it's becoming, you know, more popular every year. I mean, there's at least like 3 out of every 10 blockbuster movies that's a comic book based, you know. So I think the only really negative view is that, you know, it's only for children, and I don't know how negative that really is. I mean, kid stuff's cool.
I never bought comic books as a kid.
Okay.
So I just don't know anything about comic books.
I mean, I know nothing about them.
I don't know anything about graphic novels.
Well, I think when comics first came out, you know, like in the 30s and the 40s, they were just, you know, they were definitely for kids. They were targeted at kids for the main part. Unless, you know, you had parents growing up that were into comics. You know, I don't think many people. I don't know if that followed the generations for everybody. I come in contact with some people quite often that still think comics are just for kids, and they're definitely. I mean, they still make many comics for kids, but I think, you know, they make comics for everybody.
Who are comic books generally made for?
I think all audiences. I think they hook you in when you're young, and then they stay with you, and everybody likes to stop in a comic book store every once in a while, and if anything, they love seeing the movies about them.
I think the comic books are made for anybody who has aspirations to do something bigger than that.
Probably anywhere from teenage to adulthood.
Everyone. I mean, I know a lot of guys my age who have collections.
My grandfather kind of got me into comics. Well, I guess it was a couple different family members. My mom encouraged comics, so anytime we'd go, you know, back then we didn't live by a comic shop, so it would be like at the drugstore or the gas station, you pick up random comic here and there. He introduced me to Superman, he introduced me to Batman, and those were kind of the main two. And then I found, you know, all the other stuff on my own. After that, it was Spider-Man and X-Men and Green Lantern and kind of just wildfire. And tried to get everything I could. I love everything about comics. I love how you know, they can be something different for everybody. Some people, you know, just read it for the story. Besides being illustrated, I think they're basically like any other kind of fiction. You know, serialized fiction like television, you know, or soap operas, stuff like that. I mean, it's just in a book form.
All of them have been great at social and political commentary. Like, yeah, the X-Men in the early 60s, talking about the civil rights movement, being allegories for that. The Marvel Civil War a couple of years ago was certainly a commentary on the Bush administration and the Patriot Act and everything that was going on around in that time. So I think that they, like any good genre art, is able to hold up a mirror to what's going on in society and make critiques by the world that they inhabit.
Watchmen's Time Magazine, top 100 books ever. It's a comic book. Yeah, and then Neil Gaiman won an award for Sandman, Seasons of Mist. Right. So I mean, yeah, I think it's just a different variation of literature and fiction. It's kind of, I mean, it's pretty generic, but I mean, Superman was always my favorite as a kid, and, you know, obviously that teaches a lot of people to be, you know, not a good citizen, but respectful to others and do good, and hopefully, you know, that'll come back to you.
I think comic books teach you to be yourself, to not be afraid of the gifts that you're given, and to use those gifts for good.
Well, most of them try to teach some values, and that the underdog or the outcast can be good guys or can do it too.
What can they teach us? That to go out and do whatever your heart desires, because even ordinary people can do extraordinary things.
I actually have quite often, I'd say at least a couple times a week, somebody coming in either saying, I read comics as a kid and it's been 15, 20 years since I've picked up a book, I'd like to get back into it, or people that have said, I've never read a comic but my friends do and I want to try to get into it, what do you recommend? And quite often, people in their late 20s, early 30s, sometimes late 30s, early 40s, they'll pick up a comic. And Walking Dead alone, I mean, people are real. Ever since that show came out, or people heard about the show coming out, they've been like, "What's this show all about?" And that comic book is so addicting. So they're quickly hooked. And then I'm like, "All right, what's next after Walking Dead?" So I'm sure there's definitely some people out there that don't respect it as literature or an art form, and they just think it's funny books, But they just need to go out and read a comic book, get a graphic novel and read it. I'm sure they change their tune.